My name is David Gryn. I am based in London, and I'm director of a company called Data Editions, and I commission artist moving image, sound, web, poetry, and I've been doing that for 4 years. I'm also the curator of film and sound for Art Basel in Miami Beach. I think there's always a need of new models. I don't think my model is in addition to the gallery model. I think the gallery model is a great model when it's not doesn't become too financially motivated. When it becomes a big machine, it's very difficult to call it an art business. It's now then a financial brokerage or something. And I see what I'm doing as a model by which there's other possibilities, and it kind of fits into the jigsaw puzzle of the art world. It's not trying to take over any territory. It's trying to join in and say this is a way of doing things that maybe the galleries can think about doing more things online. I want more competitors with what I do, because you need to have a healthy collaborative competition to have a marketplace. You can't have a marketplace with just one. But when things become online, and we're talking .coms, there becomes a sort of inherent desire to have dominance. And I see it the opposite way around, that you need many to make a dominant marketplace, not one dominant player in the marketplace. There wouldn't be no art fair if there was only one gallery. There wouldn't be really a good art fair if there was only one art fair. You need the satellite art fairs to give it sort of predominance. You need the big galleries, the small galleries in the ecosystem of an art fair. The art fair itself is probably too dominant. So I believe that the gallery should be dominant in the ecosystem of the art market. The marketplace doesn't know how to handle the digital and the online, but the online is now. The online is huge. The online is ever present. It's everyone's normality. However, the art marketplace doesn't know how to make money out of it, so it resists it. When it works it out, it will be fine. But at the moment, it's resisting it because it's still centered around the object. It's centered around lifestyle. It's centered around pandering to the wealthy lifestyle. It's very difficult to organize people around the internet. So the art world controls the people by having the VIP programs, by having the art fair where people have their champagne cocktail to try and allure them into buying art, or that they can have the dialogues and the kind of social interplay. The internet isn't so easy, but however, it at one point wasn't working for the music industry. It now works for the music industry. At one point it didn't work for the cinema industry. It now works for the cinema industry. There's money and profit to be made. It's just how you do it, and how much investment can be made into it. It needs more energy and effort. At the moment, the art world resists it, probably, as you say, because of the conservative nature of the art market. But the art market is centered around the auction house, which is conservative, around the art fair, which is conservative. You need some entities that start treating it as normal behavior of looking on the internet and being able to look and acquire art no different to how you might see it at an art fair or in a gallery. We build the sort of trust of the art world. We're working with artists who have a reputation in some cases, and some are emerging, but I use my own reputation, which has been working with artists moving image for the last 20 years. I work with a big collector who's passionate, like I am, in the support and empowering of artists and the medium, Anita Zabladovich of the Zabladovich collection. And we work using our own connections, but we also do things, and I do things with other art fairs, with institutions, with galleries, with cinema. So the idea is that you sort of spill out into both worlds of online and the physical world, and make sure they're the connection into the art world that I'm part of, the art world. The logic was always that it would be, it would start off with seed funding, but it would become self-sustainable with sales and other projects that may happen that might create a revenue model. But the main thrust of it is sales perpetuate the future art commissions and the sustaining of the company. We don't invest in having lots of staff and bricks and mortar, so the costs are basically paying artists, paying the marketing of doing projects out in the wider world, and paying to keep the website alive and the company going. It's not there's not more than that. So it's pretty it costs, but it's streamlined. Always been passionate and interested in how do you empower a collector to want to buy art, to support the artist? How do you support the artist? How do you support the student? I haven't got money, but I've got the logic of philanthropy running through my veins. So the idea that I think all of us as a collective community of humans are better served if we look to how do you empower other people to be free. And I think sometimes even the wealthy need to be empowered to do good things with their money and support. I'm in the art world, so for me, I want to see how collectors can support institutions and how they might be able to be more people collecting art. I don't believe collecting art is important, but I believe in the supporting of the artist, and the artwork is important because there aren't that many great collectors, so the idea of everyone collecting art doesn't mean anything to me. I don't know what digital art is, but I know artists who work with digital mediums. So I don't know what video art is, but I know art who work with this thing called video, but video doesn't really exist because there's no video. Digital is a broad term for so many different mediums now, so to kind of put it into one container is really difficult. So I've created a platform that really is trying to say, here is some elements of digital art mediums, not all of them. I can't do everything. I work effectively on my own. I have a finite budget, so we can do so much, but we can't take over the world, and my plan is just to take over my territory of doing what I do well and to try and do it as best as I can. But again, I'm not affected and passionate about the idea of digital art so much as I'm interested in how one supports art and artists. Well, with Data Editions, we pay artists before we get the work. So the artists are commissioned. It's not a huge amount of money, but it's money. And we also give them a royalty on sales. So the idea is that there's a sort of a financial ecosystem around it, that they're not being taken advantage of or abused. We also promote the works. We try and encourage the works to be put into collections and major collectors. It's about giving a life of the work beyond just having it on the platform. There's also exhibitions and events throughout the year that we do. So it's trying to kind of keep connected to the art world and not just be embedded in the online and platform only, but also how you make sure that the artist is immediately rewarded and not taking. Artists always generally have to take risk by either working with a gallery or working on their own, because often there's no economy to doing so until the work sells. So we've tried to do it another way, that they get paid before the work's sold. I had been working with many galleries for the last 15, 20 years, working on premieres or projects with artists, often in the context of the cinema. And maybe about 9, 10 years ago, within that time, I was doing some projects around the time with the Armory show. I'd done some connections with the Frieze Art Fair. I've always been connected to the things around the art world, the art market. How do you support and engage artists, artworks, people who might support the art system. That's a passion of mine. And with that, I was trying to find a way to work best with artists' moving image in the context of the cinema. And by doing that with galleries and then art fairs, Art Basel came to me one year while I was doing a project with the Armory Show in New York saying, do you think you could help us? We struggle to get galleries to show artists' moving image during the art fair. Literally, that was the simple start point, and I just said, yep, I love a challenge. And for the biggest art fair in the world to say there's a problem with a medium, that was my challenge, is how do you get galleries to think about bringing this thing when they might not sell this thing? And my process has been to work tirelessly to encourage galleries and talk to them and find ways of including them into programming during an art fair, to find the right voice and marketing language, to find the way to show the work, to get audience to come and see it, to believe it's a valid art form. And in year one of doing it, they said you might get 5 applications. I worked very hard and got 100. Year 2, I had 200. It doesn't exponentially go up because there aren't that many art galleries in the fair, but I worked very hard to encourage galleries to feel able that they can submit the artworks that they have to support their artists. Most galleries have artists working with digital mediums. Most art fairs, you don't see it. So there's a disconnect between the two, and that's what I see as my role. I don't think of myself as a curator, I think of myself as a facilitator, as someone who brings different components together to make something work for the best benefit of all. I believe, so I have to kind of communicate a sense of passion that this is a good project for their artists, for their gallery. It doesn't work for everyone, and some people aren't that easy to talk to. Some people are easy. The galleries I naturally propel towards, they're the ones usually have somebody in there who's a person who wants to talk and be creative and understands that there's sort of more to the life of a gallery and an artist than just pure commerce. But a lot of galleries at art fair times have been paying big bills to be here, so they resist because it's not necessarily a conversation that's going to be immediately paying dividends. So some of those businesses just think about financial concerns. They don't think about how they might benefit the artists and the medium, because they do that maybe within the gallery wall. So there's possibly good reasons why they resist, because it's very expensive to be part of an art fair. And the art fair is a business model that is also, profit center. So the art fair isn't a charity. I think the art fair has to still try and be more charitable, as does, even so I've been talking and working with a few different auction houses. How can you do projects to support artists that maybe don't bring in immediate revenue, but they probably will bring in revenue in the future if we're supporting it from the ground up. I passionately believe in how you support the things from the ground up, not always from the top down. So even with data editions, we pay the artists before we see the work. We actually pay artists the same money across different sections of the platform, and we pay them the same royalty. Even when an artist may be as famous as Tracy Emin, she will get the same as a young graduate artist, because my model isn't to pay different levels, because then I have to sustain that different level, and then we sell it at the same price of each other. So it's, again, the possibility Tracy Emin might sell more than a young artist, but it may not. And then the logic is that they're at the same price point. I'm not putting auction prices or exponential pricing because I can, because therefore I would end up only showing big artists, because those are the ones which would drive revenue. And then you would not show young artists, because therefore your profit is only there at the top end. And I think that's a mistake, but obviously there's businesses who want to just make top-end money, and that's their choice. I think everything is fine now. It's just that it's more of it now. The art fair proliferation has grown exponentially, and now you have people, but most people come to an art fair for social reasons, to be able to be seen, to be looking wealthy. I mean, if you're some people who are wealthy but don't know what to do with their life, it's an outlet. It's one of the avenues. It's like, you know, we're walking in the countryside or going to the shops. You go to an art fair, you go to galleries, and you get offered a champagne drink. You get to see other rich people, or you get to mix with the poor artist, and it makes you feel good, empowering, empowered, alive. It's cultural stimulus, but it's only, for me, it's only got any value if you're understanding who you're engaging with. So I'm not saying you need to read books, but maybe understand that the artist needs to be supported in that process, and not just your entertainer and comedian. And I think the problem with this proliferation, because it has no limit, it's got no ceiling, it's growing and growing into the idea that you it's not really always, it's very rarely is it about the artist anymore, it's about a lifestyle. And with social media, you see more of it. So I'm not so sure things have changed that much, but we're more witnessing how people behave. And not everyone behaves maybe as I wish, but I'm not demanding how they should behave. But I think you spawn a mentality of the likes of a Donald Trump by this way we're going, in terms of the me generation of the late 1980s to, you know, the hedge fund mentality of how do you know, this lifestyle from making vast sums of money, how do you spend that money, and how do you live, and how are you perceived? And I think it's problematic. I don't think it's not my problem, and I just try and find a way to support those that make the artwork that fit into, to show to not just wealthy people, but to show to anybody. But there's a sort of sense that, you know, obviously wealth can support the artist and the artwork. I just don't think it's good enough on its own. It's part of a ecology, and I think there's very few art collectors who get that. But the art collectors I believe and love and believe in, they support the art student, the artist, they support the small gallery. And it's not just about supporting with money, it's supporting with interest and supporting with an understanding and attendance and joining in to the mix, and not always believing you have to dominate and own it all. Owning everything doesn't mean it's good. Selling everything doesn't mean it's good. It's sort of trying to understand what the best avenue is for the art. I even say the artwork, I mean almost for us to coexist. I think it's like the constant need of not everyone, but there's the constant need to be dominant and be powerful. And I see the world differently, and I kind of consider collaboration and as a hierarchical vision, you know, where we all can collaborate. You'll have people who do things better than others, and that's kind of interesting. And that's where you have success. So the winners of things are people who do things well, but sometimes it doesn't mean that they get treated that way, because sometimes there's things that sell easily, or people buy them because they're marketed better, because they've had more investment and more funding for all sorts of reasons, and not all of them are good. And I think the art fair is really important to the art market and the art world, but I think it's only a small part of it. At the moment it's too much of a big part of it, and I think that has to change. I think the galleries have to have more power and control, and they've given their power in many cases to the art fair, because it's easier for everybody. You pay and everyone does the marketing for you. They get audience. Galleries here who might never see a person for a month see 50 to 100,000 people in the space of a few days, and that they can't duplicate. But the gallery inherently is the most staunch supporter of the artist's career, because they invest most in the artist. You have curators, but the curator model is quirky. It's not really a business, but there are curators who get paid for doing that. The institute buys art often, so they're going back into the art market. Or I mean, it's nice when they can just support artists without the art market. Some states sponsor artists, some don't. So, I mean, I think all these elements are really important, and they all do make. And I could be negative about it all, but it's also positive. I think negative and positive exists in both cases.